mean, you're senior analyst for eToro. It's a big exchange, of course. So, what are your daily activities? What do you do with eToro?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Wessel. So I'm the senior market analyst in eToro. eToro is a global broker. It has more than 2,000 different markets, so that includes cryptocurrencies, of course, but also stocks and commodities and currencies and just about everything else that you can invest in and make money. My job as the senior analyst is to watch the markets, to identify trends. First of all, internally, so for people in the company, people on the phone, we're talking to clients, and people in the marketing who are, they want to do stuff that's surrounding things that are happening in markets. So I'm assisting with that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with clients, I'm sending out every single day a newsletter to all of eToro's high equity clients that they can see exactly what's going on in the markets, what's happening in the news, and also with the media. So doing interviews just like with yourself, but also with all of the main top tier news as well, Bloomberg and CNBC and Reuters. And Financial Times and so on.
Right. Yeah, of course. And sometimes you also do presentations, like at the Next Web. How did you enjoy Amsterdam? You were there like 1 or 2 days.
Yes, it was amazing. I was on the ground for a very short time. I came in only for the conference. The conference was it was incredible, actually. I want to say that it was intimate. I think there was only probably less than 200 people there.
Mm-hmm.
But every single person I felt was very high quality. I received a lot of good feedback. People really liked the speech that I gave about the what's going on in the economy at the moment and how to invest right now in this time. I believe that there's a lot of clear opportunities for investors.
Mm-hmm. So
And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, if we dive into that, I mean, we've seen, of course, the stock market and also the negative interests on saving accounts, etc. Um, how do you see the position of gold and also Bitcoin in the current landscape?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm holding both quite heavily in my portfolio. Gold, I just increased my position last night simply because it's come to a nice point on the technical analysis where it's a very good setup,
Mm-hmm.
with which has, obviously past performance is not an indication of future results, but the setup is quite a bullish one as well. And as you mentioned, we're talking about a trend in the global markets of negative interest rates. First of all, several central banks around the world have already imposed negative interest rates, but also a lot of the bonds. At the moment, there's about $17 trillion worth of bonds outstanding that investors have bought, knowing that instead of making money holding the bond, they're actually going to lose money.
Yeah.
Now, what this basically means, and I read a very interesting note from Mr. Howard Marks, who's very well-known economist. He has a firm called Oak Tree Capital. I respect every single note that he writes. It's like 10 to 15 pages, and I read every single word, usually 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
And the way he put it is, this trend seems prevalent, and it seems like it's getting bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be very real consequences. It means that any person or company that is holding a large amount of cash, instead of getting money for that cash and interest, they're going to have to start paying money. So this is a very strong motivational factor for people to not hold money in the bank. And the consequences could, for example, right? Creditors always want to get paid as soon as possible, right? Like, let's say if they're doing large deals, but instead now they're going to be saying, okay, you know what? hold on to the money for a while. I don't want you to pay me just yet, or stuff like that. You know, but
Yeah.
for the person with wealth, that's a scary thought, and people are going to be looking for some alternative form of a store of value. Now, gold has been serving this purpose for thousands and thousands of years, and I think that there's no dispute that if you want to hold on to your value over time, that's a good place to do it, and then you don't have the negative interest rates. It's a good way to spite it. Obviously, it's not something that people are going to, put all of the money that's in the bank into gold, but we will very likely see them diversifying and adding their allocation on gold.
All right. So, and Bitcoin is described as digital gold in the eyes of some of the Bitcoiners. That is a false analogy, but that's perhaps another discussion. But Bitcoin can also serve as a store of value, of course. So, what are your recent insights on that?
Yeah, I believe that Bitcoin's analogy as digital gold, I think, is a correct one, because it is it does have a lot of the same type of properties and aspects. I heard another opinion recently, which was by Bloomberg anchor Joe Weisenthal. It was quite funny at times. He compared Bitcoin to digital alcohol,
Oh, yeah.
where instead of taking a fruit, right, and fermenting it and turning it into into wine or vodka or scotch, actually what you're doing is taking electricity and refining it into something that's more permanent, transferable. And it was just an interesting analogy, I thought. But as far as investing in Bitcoin right now, my feeling is that it is a very high risk asset. But I also want to have exposure to it. So it's not that a high risk and I don't want to touch it, but rather it's high risk in the way that sometimes high risk investments can pay off very well. And we've seen that, especially in the tech sector, things like Amazon and Apple were also very high risk stocks to begin with, right? When in their early days, people are like, what is this? Selling books online? What kind of crackpot idea is that, right? And then obviously anybody who was involved in Amazon from the early days, that they were able to take a lot out of that, but it's very difficult to know which of those crackpot ideas is going to turn up well. So Bitcoin and all crypto assets are very high risk, but I feel that there's also a very high potential for return. We've seen several times in the past where Bitcoin returned 1,000%, 10,000, 50,000% in a very short time frame. So I think that it's kind of silly for any portfolio manager not to have some exposure to Bitcoin at the moment. And some exposure can mean anywhere from 0.5% to 10%, and sometimes 15%, depending on your appetite for risk.
Yeah. Just to be clear, I mean, eToro serves predominantly retail investors, right? I mean,
Yes.
Okay. So
We do have some corporate clients, but primarily, we have 11 million registered users, and most of them are, of course, everyday folks like you and me.
All right. And are there any numbers on how much percentage of these accounts, 11 million accounts, have Bitcoin in their portfolio, or?
Yeah, actually, you can check that right now. If you go to the eToro platform and you type in the search bar BTC, it should show you. This is actually of the active investors in the platform. So 11 million is the registered users. Of the active investors in the platform, about 35% are holding Bitcoin at the moment. So it's quite large.
Yeah. All right.
Not as large as XRP, though. I'm not going to give you a spoiler on the number, but you can check it on yourself in the platform.
All right. So, okay, if we dive into the price prediction, I mean, on the short term, this week we saw like a price dip. Is it something we can explain? I mean, obviously there are some whales in this market. I mean, it's still like a very small asset, with over, I think, 115 billion market cap. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
So always it's difficult to explain short-term movements,
Yeah.
especially in the crypto market.
Hmm.
I heard rumors that there was some large order at Bitstamp, but obviously it's very difficult to confirm those type of things. Um, what I felt was there's two things that happened here, kind of at the same time. So first of all, there was the hearing in Washington D.C. with Mark Zuckerberg,
Hmm.
which people were anticipating very much. People were waiting in front of their screens for that to happen. The drop happened a moment before the hearing started.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing on the fundamental side, not that necessarily it caused the dip or anything that was said within the hearing that caused the dip, but rather because people were, in front of their screens at the time, the market was a bit more jumpy, let's say.
Hmm.
The second
So,
thing that happened,
mhm.
and probably more critical, was there was a breakout to the downside of a critical support level. Not necessarily critical support level, but at least the support level that had been building up for some time, since the beginning of the month, let's say. Bitcoin had not gone much below 7,750, and all of a sudden, once it broke below 7,750-ish, that level, that was considered a breakdown by the market, and people had taken that for all it was worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, everybody's behind their screens, and then there's just more trading activity. You also saw the volume was picking up. I mean, the volume wasn't that great the weeks before, but
It was dismal the week
yeah,
before.
yeah, very
It
thin. Yeah.
was terrible, but you know what? Even okay, so let's use a Masari volume indicator. Masari Crypto tracks the top 10 exchanges
Mm.
who have been determined not to do wash trading on their exchanges. There's a lot of fake volumes in the crypto market.
Yeah.
But there was 10 exchanges that were determined not to be doing wash trading and not to be faking their volumes. So um, that number of the top 10 exchanges for Bitcoin was tracking over the last week about an average of $200 million a day.
Yeah.
Um, it jumped up to on the day that Bitcoin dropped, it jumped up to about $600 million that day. So
Mm.
not, I mean, it is about, 2-3 times what it was before, but if we think about long term, that's not a lot of volume for this market. That number, let's say in June and July, when Bitcoin was trending and it was, moving very fast, that number reached $5 and $6 billion a day.
Yeah.
So and even by now we can see that the numbers have come back down somewhat. So I do believe that spike in volume was specifically surrounding that movement and specifically surrounding the congressional hearings. At the moment, we're looking at 287 million. So it's pretty much back to where it was before.
All right. All right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the bucked volume, actually the bucked also last Wednesday got like a temporarily volume
Yeah,
record. I mean,
yeah.
also the
Back smashed its previous all-time highs. It traded about 5 times its daily average. I think it was like 600 some odd coins, 600, 650 maybe Bitcoin in a single day. Now, that is a pretty significant amount. I mean, if we're thinking about futures that are actually settled in Bitcoin, I believe it's about half of Bitcoin's oncoming supply that day. So it is kind of a significant number. I mean, these are not the numbers that we would expect from Wall Street. Overall, it's about, still less than $5 million, which is it's really penny change for Wall Street traders. And we've seen, the contracts on the CME group surpassing those numbers by far. But it confirmed for me, at least, something that I had suspected for a while, that as Bitcoin, or when Bitcoin becomes, I wasn't surprised that Bakkt came online with small volumes. And my assumption at the time was, when there is volatility, that's when the volumes will come. And even though today the volumes have kind of receded on the top 10 exchanges, we can still see that they're somewhat up today. Right now we're trading 300 Bitcoin so far today, and the United States session is just getting started. So that means that even though the exchange volume has receded back to its previous levels, Bakkt is still today doing more than it has ever before.
All right. Yeah, there is this trend that more financial products are moving into the market. I mean, Bakkt is introducing options on futures. CME is looking into options into futures. I mean, in that sense, Bitcoin becomes more of a speculative asset, of course. I mean, it was always a speculative asset, but it becomes more of a playing ball.
Well, I think that this is market maturity. The more products, obviously, there's no one make it or break it product for Bitcoin, because there's so many different ways to trade it. The more products that get added and the more ways to trade Bitcoin, the better off we're going to be as far as price discovery is concerned, and liquidity. And those are the main things that contribute to stability in the price. And I think that's ultimately a good thing.
Yeah. I think it was the former chairman of the CFTC, Giancarlo, who said that when the shorts got introduced to the market end of 2017, then also there was the possibility to short this asset, and that actually caused this dip. What do you think of these comments?
Did it cause the dip, or was the lack of that option what caused the bubble? Or is it just a coincidence of timing? I don't think that these things are very clear or easy answerable questions.
Okay.
Bitcoin overall is a very illiquid market. I mean, first of all, to say that there was no possibility to short Bitcoin before, it's not necessarily true. I mean, in eToro, we've had the option to short Bitcoin since 2013.
Okay.
Right? It just wasn't readily available. But also the fact that it was suddenly available on Wall Street, even though that availability was only in paper, that lends itself to price discovery. And price discovery is generally what happens. It basically keeps the price stable and keeps it making sure that we have the correct value of a specific asset.
Okay. So that's a bit difficult to have a causal effect on the price of Bitcoin. The introduction of CME futures, CBOE futures, and the dropping of the price.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was also, at the time, some other things that happened in the market, and who's to say which of them exactly caused people to buy or sell? I don't think it's all clear.
Yeah, of course, we had the crypto winter, and actually nobody expected to have this upswing in 2019. Did you expect it? I mean, we started at 3,700, I think, in January, and we ended in 14,000 in June. Now we're around 8,000. So what's did you expect this kind of move in this year?
I couldn't say that I forecasted it. I'm not really somebody who tried to tell the future. I mean, there's very few times where I say what I would try and even say that I'm fairly certain that I know what's going to happen in the future. What I would say is that throughout the entire rally, I was kind of understanding which of the coins. I think that there was 3 distinct parts of this rally. I think that from the first ones that started to move, Binance Coin and Litecoin, I think that was kind of what started this whole thing. By February 11th, it was very clear that there was an alt season happening where various altcoins were seeing tremendous gains throughout different time periods, and it was profitable at that time to hold altcoins where Bitcoin was more or less stagnant. Then on April 2nd, we had a pop where Bitcoin moved above the 200-day moving average. And I believe that's when alt season ended and Bitcoin took firm control over the market. And that lasted until about July. And then we've had a period of stagnation pretty much ever since.
Yeah. If you look at the channel, then we are in this stagnation, consolidation, stagnation channel. If you look at, I mean, we are still like 8 months away from the halving. The block rewards will be halved for the miners. If you look at the history, then it always has effect on price because, of course, there are less Bitcoin on the market. What are your expectations from this event?
I'm actually going into this with 0 expectations. I have no idea what's going to happen in this halving. I mean, yes, it's very possible that due to the reduced incoming supply, we'll get an increase of demand, especially in an asset that is so scarce, such as Bitcoin. But I don't think that whatever is going to happen is necessarily already priced into the markets. But rather, I think that we have some ways to go before this event, and I think that it will be exciting to watch how it unfolds.
Yeah. Okay. And are you familiar with the model, the StocktoFlow model of Plan B? It's actually he how do you say? He has made this StocktoFlow model in the sense that Bitcoin is compared to other hard assets like gold and silver, and it's also attached to this this model of scarcity. So because of a fixed supply, and we have now 80 million Bitcoin, the flow will be less, the stock will be higher. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, the whole, if you look at the market conditions, when the incoming flow of Bitcoin will be lower, then of course it has its price effect. But
right. Well, yeah, Bitcoin is notoriously scarce. I mean, it's kind of built into the code for Bitcoin. This is one of the core principles of this market. So, yes, definitely. What I would add to Plan B's projections and charts simply is the level of coins, first of all, that have been lost due to owner death, misplacement of keys, throwing out a hard drive, those type of things. And the other thing is that you have a lot of coins that are locked in hodl wallets, as we call them, where people are not willing to sell at any price, right? And I believe that the supply that we're looking at for Bitcoin is a lot less than people actually think. My best estimate is that there are only about 4 or 5 million coins on the market that are at any given day that can be traded, probably even less. So
that are liquid. Yeah.
We're talking about a very illiquid market, which is by design can be very volatile and can be susceptible to price movements with even a single large order.
Yeah. So so it's quite hard to make any prediction, right? I mean, if you look at historically, the last quarter of every year is also a good I mean, a good quarter for Bitcoin, but we've seen October hasn't started that well.
People try to make those assumptions in the stock market as well, and I've seen people even collecting lots and lots of data about which month specifically is best for the markets and which day of the week and stuff like that. For me, these things are kind of trivial. It's a long-term play. As the network grows, as more and more people become part of the network, the available supply drops. As more people get involved, there's the price goes up, and this is for me a very long-term play. I don't think I don't know necessarily about a 250K price target like Tim Draper or 2 million price target like official McAfee, but for me, as far as I see, it's worthwhile to hold for the long term because there are so many people who believe in it, and because also for ideological reasons, the fact that money can be free and independent of governments and banks, that entices me to be part of that network. I'm not going to mine Bitcoin, and I'm not going to set up a node. I'm not that technical, and I don't have the time for it. But as an investor, it's something that I want to hold.
All right. Maybe a few questions about, I mean, we talk about gold, we talk about Bitcoin. Of course, when we look at Bitcoin, it's like digital and transferable, and then of course you can transfer it via internet or even satellites or radio waves, etc. If you look at Bitcoin as a network and also as a payment, do you? Of course, there's this Lightning Network that is built upon the ground layer of Bitcoin. Is it something you're interested in, or you follow the?
I'm certainly watching the developments in the Lightning Network. However, I am less optimistic about it. I've used it personally. I really appreciated the initiative of Hodlonaut on Twitter, who I'd been speaking to for months, and eventually was passed me the Lightning Torch, which was quite an honor to receive. But after using the Lightning Network, I found it very difficult from a user perspective. And what people keep telling me is that the UX is, it's not their concern. Their concern is, the nitty gritty and the infrastructure is fine, but they've been working on this infrastructure for a very long time. I found the way that invoices work, where you have to actually send somebody an invoice, it was very tedious. The invoices were long in text, very, very text heavy, and they expired very quickly. So if somebody was not on the other end waiting, I mean, it's fine in a payment situation, right? You got to get up to the counter. They give you they show you the invoice, you scan the code. That's fine. But on the internet, on social media, I found it very, very tedious, where I needed to continuously post invoices for people, and if they weren't, then I need to renew the invoice, and that was just messed up. But further than that is the issue of liquidity, the fact that you have to lock Bitcoin up in a node, the fact that if there isn't enough Bitcoin in that node, the transfers just can't get sent. It's kind of for me, it just didn't seem like a very great solution for long-term scalability. It was wonderful in that it was cheap, it was fast. I think it was even, I don't even think I paid any fees using the Lightning Network whatsoever, and I made several transactions. And it was very quick. I mean, almost instantaneous. But I think that they still have issues that they need to sort out, specifically regarding liquidity, regarding the invoice system, and and regarding the user interface, because those things for me were a very difficult experience.
All right, right. Yeah, I think it's still an experiment, right? I mean, there are still some bugs in it, and it's still building. So if you look at the industry right now, I mean, and you compare it to the tech bubble, I mean, are we still in the beginning of the 90s, or I mean, are we still in this? I mean, are we still warming up for the first inning? Right. I mean, if you look at the developments of this ecosystem, like
Yeah.
the crypto Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that it seems like we're still early days for Bitcoin. I mean, I was pretty amazed, and while I was in Amsterdam, I sat next to a gentleman from Ireland in the bar. He asked me what I do. We started talking. He's like, "Yeah, I got some Bitcoin." So I mean, it's already regular for people to understand what Bitcoin is and to have had transactions. And I think that the number of people is growing quite rapidly, but also can grow further if we do see better innovation as far as wallets and technology, and adoption by merchants. And I think that there's a lot to grow. There's also various dangers, especially particularly from the mining side, where we see the hash rate growing very, very fast, and I believe that that's largely based on technical innovations from the hardware providers. I'm not so scared about, let's say, these Google supercomputers, because I believe that that's something that's not yet a threat, but once it becomes a threat, can be easily dealt with if the community rallies together, which I believe that they will, if that threat does manifest. So I'm quite bullish on Bitcoin in general. I love what it stands for, and I believe that my way of joining this network is to have exposure in it.
All right. And is there a future possible that our kids and our grandkids will pay with Bitcoin or Satoshis? Is that a foreseeable future? I mean, or is it just like, I know, it's just like a dream? I mean,
I believe that it is a possible future. I don't know if it's necessarily the most likely one. I know that they've been printing a lot of money lately, which is unbacked fiat currencies, which can be a problem. I hope that this somehow gets resolved. I don't know how it's going to get resolved at some point. For now, it hasn't been that much of a problem. We haven't seen hyperinflation. I hope it stays that way. The future is big. We need to always prepare ourselves for any possible outcome.
All right. Okay, so yeah, and what is necessary to actually increase adoption? I mean, we need more user interfaces that are, I mean, we're used to all these apps, and we're used to very slick user interfaces. So that's perhaps something to work to in the Bitcoin environment, or are there some other things you want to see improvements?
I think that that we are continuing to progress, especially when markets are stagnant like they have been in the last few weeks. I think that that's something that's a good timing to see kind of what's being developed during this period. Yeah, I'm overall bullish on the industry. Even today, we had both the IMF and the president of China becoming bullish on blockchain technology. So it's very exciting times right now.
Right. Okay, now thank you very much, Mati, for your insights. Yeah, I mean, and if you want to do like a wild prediction on the price, is this something? Do you have a figure in mind for the ultimate price of Bitcoin?
No. No. Thanks for asking, but I really don't have a clue. At the moment, I have about 8% of my portfolio in crypto. Probably about 4 or 5% of that is Bitcoin. Other than that, I wouldn't even venture to guess where the price is going to be in any sort of time frame.
Right. And actually, people can find your portfolio on eToro, right? I mean, it's all transparent.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
You just go to eToro, type in my name, Mati Greenspan, and you'll see me there. Or, of course, connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. People are always tagging me on Twitter with news events that are interesting or questions that they have about investments, and I'm always happy to answer them.
Right. And any chance that you are for family from Alan Greenspan, or is that just a coincidence?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mati, and all the best, and thank you very much for your time.